Hi, my name is Natalie Zeringer, and I am an elementary school English language learner teacher in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I'm also a graduate student at Morningside University. My research project is called The Effects of Using an Interactive Sight Word Notebook on Sight Word Acquisition and Student Engagement with Second Grade English Language Learners. So student demographics have been changing over the last 50 years or so. 1 out of every 4 households consist of families that English is not their primary language. Because of this, there are significant gaps between our English language learners and our native English speakers at school that schools need to address. Now, sight words are essential to reading. Research done by Miles McFadden and Airy found that the most effective way to learn how to read, or a most efficient way to learn how to read, is to learn sight words. Sight words can be really challenging for ELL students because they did not grow up hearing the language and knowing what the sounds and the words, how they go together. They also are still trying to learn sounds and letters and spelling and syntax and semantics, all at the same time while they're trying to learn new content. And it's been found that proficient readers need to know at least 50,000 words. Now, 25% of the words in our school textbooks are made up of 13 sight words. And then another 100 to 200 words make up about 50% of the words that are encountered in school. So there's a big importance to teaching our ELL students their sight words so that they can spend their energy trying to learn new vocabulary and new content. So there's also some potential problems that students encounter if they are not able to read. First of all, ELL students are held to the same standard as native English speakers for standardized testing. So even though we know that they can't perform at the same level and that we do differentiation in our classrooms so that they are receiving instruction, our testing still says that they have to do the same amount of work or the same type of work as our native English speakers. There's also an increased rate of high school dropout. And for those students who drop out, it's harder for them to go back. They also are more likely to be on state aid, and it's also harder for them to get a really good job, so they have decreased earning potential in the future. Students who also drop out of school and don't learn to read earn less money, and they also have jobs where there are less benefits available to them. So some of the past sight word research, there's not anything really that's been specifically done just for ELL students, but some different programs have been flashcards in which students do rote memorization. There's the SWIFT, or Sight Word Instruction is Fundamental to Reading. This is a small group interaction where teachers teach sight words in a specific order and pair them with phonemes. So they're learning the sounds of the words and the sounds of the letters that go with the words. The problem is it doesn't address any of those words that are irregular. So there's a lot of sight words that you can't just sound out. And then there's also the computer-assisted instruction, which a lot of students like because it's very game-oriented, but it doesn't have that personal interaction that students really need to learn. So the current curriculum that the Cedar Rapids School District uses is the National Geographic curriculum. And this is a curriculum specifically designed to be used in our ELL classroom with ELL students. And there is a sight word component to it, which I will go into. So the research project purpose is to introduce an interactive sight word notebook to ELL students. The goal of this project is to increase student sight word acquisition and increase student engagement while learning their sight words. So the study design is a mixed method study looking at both quantitative and qualitative data. It's an A-B action research plan. It was designed to specifically be able to look at the trends that happen while students are in the A phase and using just the National Geographic curriculum, and then look at the trends and themes that emerge in the B phase when students are using the interactive sight word notebook. Now, the group of students that I chose are my second grade ELL students. There's 10 of them, 3 boys and 7 girls. And I chose them because they come from a wide variety of countries, several African countries, Micronesia, and Mexico. And there's various levels of language proficiency. Students who have only been in the country for a few months as to students who were born and raised here. So there's a nice wide variety of students to try this with. So prior to my A phase, I collected material from the EasyCBM website, which is a free website online, and got a second grade sight word assessment. Then I also collected a sight word recording sheet for each individual student so I could record their information. And then I created an interview that I could do with students. Now, each of these things were done one-on-one with students. It was a 1-minute sight word assessment, then all of that data was recorded into the EasyCBM progress monitoring site, so I could go back and look at it later. And then the interviews were kept, and I went through and looked for commonalities between them. Then I started the A phase. This is the National Geographic online curriculum that I used. All I needed was a Promethean board, the access to the curriculum, and then a notebook for me to do observations. Students were introduced, I'm going to move myself over here. Students were introduced to the high frequency words in the top right corner of the screen, and then they sang a song in an I do, we do, you do approach. So most of the students liked it. I would say more girls than boys liked it. There were 4 students that were not engaged at all with it. But the problem with this program is that there isn't a lot of word work with the words after you learn them in the songs. So then the A phase came to an end. I did another sight word assessment and did interviews again, recorded that data in the EasyCBM sight word or EasyCBM website, and collected my data from my interviews. Then the B phase started. So I introduced the interactive sight word worksheets, gave each student a notebook, had pencils, pens, crayons, markers, glue sticks, scissors, anything they might need to do their worksheets. And then I had notebooks and note cards for me to record my observations. Below were samples of different activities that students would do. So the procedure was I introduced the notebook, then each day students would be introduced to one word, and they would work through various activities and talk with one another about the different sentences and different ways to use the word. And then at the end of the next day, before introducing a new word, students would do a quick review of the previous word and do a quick word search. So we did this for 4 weeks, and I took observational notes, and then at the end I did a final sight word assessment again and another interview. The analysis materials and procedures, I use the EasyCBM website for progress monitoring and comparison reporting. I also use the JAS Qualitative Data Analysis program and 6x8 note cards for me to record different information and break it up into chunks. All of the data was entered in the CBM website to be compared. Spreadsheets of qualitative data was prepared and imported into JASP so that I could create different types of t-tests, and then my observational notes were broken down into note cards to look for themes, similarities, and differences. My qualitative data, these are the 3 tests that students took, and there was not a huge change between them. The same 6 students scored between 0 and 9 words per minute. My lowest was 1 and 1 correct word per minute, and that same student scored 1 correct word per minute for all 3 tests. My highest was in the first, on October 5th, was a 48 words per minute, and that student did lose a little bit, but it stayed pretty close to the 48 words per correct minute. The other 4 students moved around just a little bit, but not too much. So my independent sample t-tests came back. I did them by boys and girls. There was no statistical significance in how students did on their sight word assessments. So using an interactive sight word notebook increase student sight word acquisition? Not really. Looking at my qualitative data, the emerging theme from the A phase was that girls really enjoyed the sight word singing songs way better than the boys did. Then 8 out of 10 students said that they liked to read, but only 4 out of 10 considered themselves to be good readers. What did show to be statistically significant were those students who considered themselves to be good readers and their scores on their sight word assessments. So if they considered themselves to be good readers, they did better on their sight word assessments than those students who said they like to read, but they're not very good at it. Now, student engagement there was a definite change. In the first A phase, there was only 60% engagement in students. But in the B phase, there was 100% engagement. What this doesn't show is that students became a little bit more unenthusiastic about doing them. I started hearing things like, oh, again, or oh, we did that yesterday, or why are we doing this again? So students just weren't as engaged and as excited about doing it as they were when it was initially introduced. So looking at past research, as I said, there's been very little work done with sight word instruction for ELL students. Now, Piaget and Vygotsky had very different beliefs, but they were both constructionists. They believed that teacher facilitation should occur, students should work with their peers, and they should have hands-on learning so they construct new meaning. Now, the interactive sight word notebook paired interactions with peers and teacher while practicing saying spelling, using sight words, and to construct new meaning. Where the flashcards, Swift, CAI, and National Geographic curriculum all had their place, but they were missing little components of each of these different constructionist theories. So the implications are, yeah, it did increase student engagement, but students were losing interest in the sight word activities. It had minimal effect on their sight word acquisition, and it was very time-consuming for both the teacher and the students. It was supposed to only take about 10 to 12 minutes, and the first week it took 20 to 25 minutes each day. So it's not the best intervention for an ELL setting because I only had 40 minutes per day to work with students, and that was mostly taken up by doing sight word interventions. Now, it is very labor intensive. I tried to cut down on how long it would take, and that made it more labor intensive for the teacher. I think this would be a better project for teachers to use in the classroom as like a reading rotation, so that students aren't doing it consistently day after day, but they are being exposed to it. I would also recommend that they make packets for students so that they don't have to cut and paste and do that kind of thing. And I would include interactive sight word notebook as a reading center for students, just to help streamline the procedures for everyone. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your listening.